people of the world, welcome to my workshop, aka my one-car garage. Today we're going to be making over this dresser right here, and it does have a nightstand that comes with it. It is for one of my clients. Her daughter just turned 5. We want to make it so that it's super cute and girly, but also something that can grow with her. So I decided, let's do a monochromatic blend on this. Also, sometimes people call it an ombre, a gradient, what have you. We're gonna be starting with one color, and then we're going to add white to that to create other colors. So monochromatic means it's one color, and then you either darken it with a black or you lighten it with a white. And so we're gonna do a monochromatic blend using only 2 colors. We're gonna be using bright pink and white, and we are going to create a blend with that. If you guys wanna see this, keep watching.
This dresser was previously painted, and the top is a laminate top. We are going to strip the top down, and we're going to take all the hardware out, plug the holes, because we are going to do new hardware on here. You can see right here, this is a laminate Formica top. We're going to remove all the hardware, and then what I like to do is I like to take painter's tape and put it behind those holes before I do any kind of wood filler. That stops the wood filler, and so that way it doesn't just keep continuing to go behind there. And so I'm going to put my tape in here, and then I like to use a 2-part wood filler. I do live in Germany, so this is what I get from the local hardware store, but Bondo has a multi-purpose wood filler that you can use, which is the same exact concept. You take it out of your jar, and then there's a hardener you mix into it. And then when I'm filling holes, what I do, I push the filler into the hole first to make sure it's completely filled, and then I smooth over the hole, and that way it covers it, and then when I sand it later, it's covered and I can paint over it. When I'm painting over a laminate top, I like to use a gripping primer for that before I paint. And so you can see right here how it's kind of just coming off super easily. And so I'm going to sand everything off first with my 3x4 electric ray by Surf Prep. I'm going to take a 120 grit, and I'm going to just strip all of that paint off of the top first. And then I'm going to clean it really well. And then we're going to use a gripping primer, which many companies have. And what that does is it allows that paint to adhere. The primer adheres to the laminate surface, and then that way when you paint over it with another paint, it grips to it really well, and you won't have those problems of it chipping or coming off. So I'm going to clean this really well, the entire piece. I always clean my pieces first, because you just never know. So, and there's a lot of cleaners out there, so I'm going to clean everything first, and then we are going to use the gripping primer on the top. Remember, this is a Formica laminate top, and so it's not a porous surface, so this is the perfect time to use a gripping primer for this, or adherence primer, whatever someone wants to call it. I like to use a high density foam roller when I am applying this, and generally for these kind of primers, you want to apply it first and then wait a few hours and then apply your second coat, and then I let it sit overnight just so that it can sit and start doing its job and curing and adhering to the surface, and then I paint over it. After it is dry, after the second coat is dry before I paint it, I do take a super fine sandpaper and I just go over it a little bit, because you never know if there's any kind of fuzzies or anything, and it just smooths it before I put any paint on it.
Okay, everybody, so before we start, I want to explain a few things that we're going to do. When you're doing a monochromatic blend, you usually take one color, and that's kind of your focal color. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a pink. So we're going to take a bright pink color. I know it kind of looks red on the screen, but this is a bright pink color, and this is our focal color. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this color as it is on the bottom, and then we're going to keep lightening it up and lightening up and lightening it up. So we're going to be creating different colors with just this color, and then I pulled out a white because we want to go lighter. So a monochromatic can be when you add a white to make it lighter, or you make it darker. So we could have went with the pink and done like a black or something and made it darker going up. So it's gonna be like an ombre, what you would think is an ombre, but this is monochromatic. So only 2 colors. So for this one, we're gonna be using that pink and we're gonna be using the white. And that's why I have these mixing jars so we can mix different shades of those 2 colors. To start from the bottom, we're gonna do dark and go up light. Now, you can use whatever kind of paints that you want. Generally for me, what I do is I usually stay within the same type of paint. And what I mean by that is, if I'm gonna try this with a mineral paint, I will mix 2 mineral paints together. Whatever brand that is, I try to stick with mineral paints. If I'm gonna do a chalk-like paint, I try to stick 2 chalk-like paints together. It doesn't have to be the same brand, but just the same kind of paint. You know, they have clay paints, so I try to stick with, you know, maybe a clay paint. Just because it makes it a little bit easier for me, because each type of paint has different properties. Some blend a little bit easier without each other. But you know what? If you want to break the rules, mix within. Mix a mineral paint and a chalk paint. Mix a, you know, clay paint with a chalk paint, or milk paint with a... There's no rules in art. But I'm just saying that, especially if you're a beginner kind of playing around, I would stick with the same type of paint that you're mixing. Does that make sense? I hope so. All right, so we're gonna start with doing the bottom with the darker pink, and then we're going to start mixing together. Super excited.
I started with a jar of a dark pink and a jar of a dark white, and we are going to mix 4 different colors, well actually 3 different colors with these 2 jars. The first thing I did is I took the pink as it was and I marked on the bottom. Now you guys are going to see I do this with the drawers in. I do later on pull all the drawers out to get the shell of the piece, but this is so that I can visualize where my blends are going to be. And so I am just using the dark pink on the bottom, and we're going from dark to light. So we're going to do the dark pink on the bottom wherever I want it to be. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to mix my next color. And by mixing my next color, I am going to take that dark pink color that I am painting with right now, and I'm going to pour a little bit of that into another mixing bowl. And then I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of paint, that's the white paint, mix it, and then see what it looks like, kind of compare it to that dark pink. If it's not quite different enough, I'm going to add a little bit more pink. This is where you really just need to use what you want and what colors you want, but don't go crazy. So do this a little bit at a time. So you want to just do a little bit of white at a time, because you don't want it to get too light, because then you're having to add more pink and mess around with it. Now, if it gets too light, you can add a little bit more of that dark pink if that happens. But what I would do is I would do the dark pink, add a little bit of white, mix it, compare them. I see in here, I compared it and it's not quite light enough. And so they look different, but not different enough. And so I'm going to add a little bit more white, mix it up, and then I'm happy with it. After I applied my second pink to the dresser, I'm going to mix my next color. So I'm going to take that pink that I just mixed and I'm going to pour that into a bowl. And then I'm going to add a little bit of white to that. So it's like a step process. You use the 2 colors you started with in the beginning to mix, and then you take the color that you mixed and you add that to a bowl, and then you add a little bit of white to that. And you just do it gradually, because that's what this is. You want it to be a gradual blend. And so you want the colors to be, they're all in the same color family, but they're different than each other. So you can see the difference in all of those. And now I'm going to apply that next pink to the dresser. The last color will be the lightest one, and so we're actually going to use the white as the base because if we just did the pink as the base, we'd have to put a bunch of white in there. So we're just going to use the white as a base and put a little bit of pink in there, and that's how we're going to mix our lightest pink color. And that way we are not wasting a bunch of paint. So you can put as much paint as you want into these jars. You do want to make sure that the volume of paint that you have will be enough for you to paint your entire dresser. So just make sure you keep that in mind. So if you have to start with a lot more white and a lot more pink to start with so that you can mix your colors, then that's what you want to do. So I'm going to put my last color on this dresser, and I'm going to make sure I have 2 coats of each of these colors before we go in and start doing our blending. Here are the 4 colors that are next to each other. That's our original pink, and then this was the first blend that we did. This is the next blend that we did, and then that's the final pink. And all of those colors were made with that original pink and the white. And now you can see I'm going to go ahead and fix the frame, and so that way it looks nice. Before I go in and blend, I always go in, I paint the frame and do whatever little tiny blending I need to do on the frame, and that way everything looks nice. I did decide that I wanted to put some wood bend moldings on here because it's very, very flat and the piece didn't really have character. So I did some wood bend moldings on here, and how you apply these is you heat them up first. So these appliques, I heat them up, and then you want to take glue. So I took some Type Bond Quick and Thick, and that's what I put on the back of these because I was putting it over top of paint and not directly on a piece of wood. So I'm going to put that on there and spread it all around, and then I'm going to push it down, and I take a dry, cheap chip brush, and once I push it down, when that glue comes out from it, I just wipe it away with that brush. And then I also added some moldings to the outside of the top 2 drawers as well. And then when I went in and I did my blending, that's when I covered all these appliques. The blending technique I used on this dresser is the same for all the colors and the front and the side. So I mist the surface, and then I take my dark pink and I wet that transition line, because that's what we're doing, is we're blending that transition line. And it was kind of dry in there, so you'll see me use a little bit more of the water. So just, if it's too dry, make sure you're using enough water so that these paints will blend together. Then I'm taking that first mixed pink color, and I'm going to put that on the transition line so that we have wet paint from the lighter pink and the darker pink. And I'm just going to mist the area, and I'm going to work this transition line. So I'm going to take the darker pink color, and I'm going to just feather it and go horizontal, vertical, and in circles so that I can start trying to blend these colors together. And I'm going to toggle between those 2 colors. So I'm going to mist it, I'm going to take the lighter color pink, I'm going to go horizontal and vertical, and then do some circles there as well. And you can do diagonals as well if you want to, but make sure that surface is continued to be misted. If your brush starts catching, you need to mist the surface. So you see that I was doing circles, and then I'm going to use a clean, dry, neutral brush, and I am going to feather everything together. So when you're blending, you're going to need a mister bottle, you're going to need your paintbrush for each color, and then a clean, dry, neutral brush for the final blend. So that way it feathers and smooths those colors together. Like I said before, I used this technique on the entire piece. So it's the same exact technique, just different colors. And you're just blending everything together. And this is going to give you an awesome monochromatic blend. When you're using just that pink and that white, you know that these colors are so similar that this kind of blending is actually much easier than taking colors that are in different color families. And because you're using those colors and making them from the same exact tones, they blend a little bit easier as well. So this is a really good technique for beginners. I am going to seal the entire surface with a satin polyacrylic, and then once that is dry, I am going to take some gold gilding wax, and I am just going to take one of my little makeup brushes, and I'm going to lightly go over those would you been appliques that we put on, just to add a little pop of character, because this is for a little girl, although I pretty much want it to. I feel like this is good for adult people as well. So I hope you guys like this video, because now this piece is done.
All right, everybody, here is the piece. The video is done. I hope you guys found that helpful. It's crazy. You can get this look with only 2 colors. Only 2! Until next time, happy creating, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Hey, darling, can I tell you what's been on my mind? Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city life. Hey, darling, we could get out of town, see the beautiful world around, wanna see it now. Pack our bags and get